Hello, good evening, everyone. We are back with another Facebook Live, and today also is going to be a very interesting session because the theme that we have picked up for today is a contribution of relations at work to career growth. This is one challenge that I have come across people expressing it, that how do we improve our relations with our team members, with our peers, with our bosses, very, very specifically, they say, so that we become more functional, we start progressing more in our careers. And we have a very interesting person to help us in understanding this whole spectrum of relations. And she is Sujata Ameya. She's also author of a poetry book. We'll be listening to her as to which is the title of the book and how she came about writing that, because that speaks a lot about relations. And let me give you a little introduction of Sujata. She's a psychotherapist and a relationship coach who enables partner in threshold marriage to reconnect consciously or disengage gracefully and transition powerfully. Holds an MPhil from in clinical psychology from NIMHANS, one of the most prestigious institutes in the country on mental health. And she has a private practice in Hyderabad, has been doing it for over 29 years. She has helped more than 14,000 clients, individuals, couples, families, and groups to work with conflict as a catalyst for self-discovery. It's very interesting. Conflict as a catalyst for self-discovery, because conflict throws up a lot of things to you if you are ready to look at it. So she helps in self-discovery through that. And with additional training and certification in past life. So these are the add-ons which help any person to make even more profound in her profession, past life regression, heal your life, coach. And she seamlessly blends the knowledge systems of modern Western psychology with ancient Eastern wisdom. Amazing. She conducts quite a number of workshops on this subject of her interest. So let us bring Sujata right in the Facebook Live. Welcome, Sujata, for this Facebook Live. First of all, thanks for accepting this invite, for being here. And I'm sure our audience are waiting to listen to you. So you can start with a little introduction. How did you step into this journey of relation? It's a very complex subject, if I say so. How did you step into this understanding, getting into this study of relation and then making it your life work?
Yeah. So I think we all have something called an innate resonance, right? It is something that is very alive in us. That's a spark right from childhood. And if we pay attention, it actually paves our path to our unique purpose. That's what I really, really believe. So I feel the kind of childhood experiences I had, or rather the lack of experiences, because I grew up as a very, very isolated, alone kind of a child, took me into my inner world with a lot of questions and explorations about what's going on, who am I, does anybody love me, does anybody care for me, those kinds of things, right? And then organically, I found myself very interested in people and relationships, and especially how the mind works. And that took me into psychology, which I did at the undergrad level and then also the PG. And from there, NIMHANS was a very natural choice, because there is not only the understanding of how the mind functions, but there's also the understanding of how the mind dysfunctions, if we can use it as a verb.
Right.
So it is during my training in NIMHANS that I discovered that this is my resonance. What used to happen is we were posted in different subspecialties within clinical psychology. And I think I just came alive when the posting happened to the family and marriage unit there. I was in my element, and that's when I decided this is all I'm going to do. So right after coming out of NIMHANS, right from day one, literally, I've had a private practice, and I feel God and the universe have been enormously graceful in just helping me along this path. And whatever I've learned is primarily because of the clients I've worked with. So yes, it's a complex topic, but it is, I think, anything worthwhile in life is complex, is deep, and it is an invitation to exploration and discovery.
Right. So
Yeah.
what comes to my mind, you used very interesting words here: complex, deep, and worthwhile. Actually, when it is complex, you want to make it simple, right? And when you want to make it simple, you can't make it simple without going deeper into it, right?
Absolutely.
So that is what my understanding comes from
Absolutely.
the words that you have used: complex, deep, and then you start resonating, you start enjoying that whole understanding of the subject, and that makes you kick, so to say. Great, thanks for sharing your brief journey about how did you come into. So you have worked with 14,000 plus clients. So are all these conversations happening one to one, or they happen over phone, or you have international, must be having international clients also?
It's a mix, Vikram. It's a mix. It's individuals, it's couples, it is families where we have parents and
Okay.
children.
Okay.
Sometimes it's in-laws and the next generation as well.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And many a times it's workshops. I do public workshops as well as relatively not too many, but also corporate workshops.
Uh-huh.
And yes, you're right. I do have clients across the globe. It started off with people here after seeing me relocating and wanting to continue. So back in the days, we used to do Skype and
Uh-huh.
those kinds of video
Right, right,
experiments. And then
right,
thankfully, Zoom came in about 4 5 years, I don't
right,
know, whenever. So
right,
since then, yes, I do both online and offline work. And now,
right,
of course, with the pandemic, we are all very much online
right,
only.
right,
So
right,
yes, it's a mix of all different
right,
modalities. Yeah.
right. So the next question that comes to my mind is, why are relations so difficult?
You kind of just went straight to the point, huh? Bullseye.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you made a very interesting observation about uh, complexity, depth, and simplicity.
Right,
So you're so right that unless you deep dive, it is difficult to really express anything meaningfully. You
right,
without simplifying it, right?
right,
So
right.
to answer your question, why why are relations so difficult? This is my understanding. I'm not saying this based on any theory or any such thing, but my own study, my own understanding. What happens is in the upbringing we have, and no matter who you are, no matter which part of the globe you are, no matter what color you are, what religion you are, it doesn't matter. The process of parenting and upbringing is designed to cause some kind of psychological injury and trauma to the child. That's a
Right,
given.
right,
Degrees differ. The nature of that trauma may differ from family to
right.
family, but it is there.
Mhm.
So what happens is those of us who are able to navigate that and evolve through all the stages of growth in a conscious and a proper way are able to deal with relationships in a very different, more mature kind of approach. Whereas those of us who have not had that opportunity or don't have the resourcefulness or the trauma is too significant and deep, those of us will continue to be stuck in that state of mind, even though chronologically we may have grown into adulthood.
Right.
So we bring those things into the present relationship unwittingly, unconsciously.
Uh-huh.
It's almost like you're seeking a closure and completion for that issue, for that pain,
Uh-huh.
for that undone business.
Uh-huh.
And that is how trouble begins in the present. Which is
Uh-huh.
why I say that conflict actually is a lovely pathway to self discovery because
Right.
your conflict will center around the original trauma.
Uh-huh.
So
Right.
it's a nice roadmap that can take you back there.
Right. Heal it and then come back to the present.
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
so, in your introduction, I was reading that you have done Heal Your Life workshops also, or the study of that. So, I remember a quote from Louis Hay, who says that we are all victims of victims. Perhaps that is what says it all when you said that we do experience some traumas through the way we are parented. So is that I'm connecting the dots right?
Yes, you are absolutely. So there's another way someone else puts it, hurt
Right,
people.
right, right,
It's the
right,
same
right,
thing. Yeah.
right.
And also the good side of it, the flip side of it is counselors, healers, therapists, and coaches, and nurses and doctors, these are all wounded soldiers. They
Uh-huh.
themselves have gone through some kind of a depression or neglectful upbringing, and as a compensatory mechanism, unconsciously they are drawn to these
Okay.
kinds of healing and helping professions.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So yes, I think the big part of our growth work actually lies in this underground inner world, not
Uh-huh.
so much in the outer world.
True,
Actually,
true,
if you
true.
said this right internally,
Uh-huh.
externally also it will show up very, very well, very differently.
True, true, true. I also say in my workshops to leaders that leadership is all about working inside out rather than just polishing your outside. It won't help you in the long run.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Coming to the next question that I have is what are some behaviors, and I'm keeping myself into the conversation. It can be about anyone actually. What are some behaviors that I demonstrate so that my relations improve? What shall I do in my behavior?
Okay. So, based on what we've spoken so far,
Uh-huh.
hoping and assuming that a good amount of attention has been given to working on the inner self also,
Mhm.
then externally, what behaviors we can show. Actually, I've shared that slide with you. If we can go into it, I can explain this in a much easier way.
Right. Just give me a minute.
If I just wanted to explain that my answer to your question, what are the some of the behaviors we can demonstrate to improve relationships, is based on this model that I have evolved and developed over the years of my work. This is not from any book as such. This is
Uh-huh.
all different pieces based on my observation and my intuition that has come together. And I realized that it is a mapper for any universal principle. By
Uh-huh.
that, what I mean is anything that can fit into this framework in a appropriate way can not only capture and unravel what the problem is, it can also lead to the solutions. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
this model is used to identify what are the issues in marital conflict, in workplace conflict, in sibling conflict. It doesn't matter, any human system conflict will fit into this, and thereby if you flip it, it also reveals the possible solutions.
Right,
So if you
right.
can click the next thing,
Uh-huh.
as I say here, whether it is intrapsychic, that is within the person, or interpersonal, family, community, organization, doesn't matter. These laws are followed. This law of cyclical movement and polarity, the good and bad, the up and down, the hot and cold, those kind of things. So if we go to the next slide, I can explain the answer. Next one, please. Yeah. So I have mapped those four elements: earth, water,
Uh-huh.
fire, and air, and of course,
Right,
space in the middle,
right.
using this, what I call this a donut, my donut models. I have like
Okay.
I don't know, couple of dozen of them for various different aspects of relationship
Right.
issues. So the earth represents the physical. Next, click. The fire represents the intellectual aspect. The
Okay.
water represents the emotional aspect.
Okay.
Air represents the spiritual aspect. And
Okay.
space represents the transpersonal aspect. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So this is how the elements and the human aspects are mapped. And this is not something I'm discovering or declaring. This is a known thing based on ancient wisdom traditions as well as some of the neuroscience research that is going on right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Then, if you correspond these two behaviors,
Uh-huh.
if you engage the earth component in your behavior, it comes up as respect, the demonstration of respect. Can you
Okay.
click on that one?
Okay. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So, what
Yeah.
is respect? Respect has to do with the basic stance of it exists, so therefore it is valid.
Right.
There is no judgment at all about whether it's appropriate, not good, correct, wrong, mistake, perfect, nothing. It is
Uh-huh.
it calls for and asks for your basic acknowledgement of respect, that it is so, it is there, and therefore it is worthy of respect. That's a
Right.
very fundamental concept of. So if you can demonstrate this in your behavior, where you
Uh-huh.
meet someone with the basic attitude of you are worthy just because you are, that's it,
Right.
not
Right.
because of anything else.
Right.
That kind of embodiment of respect creates a whole different field of exchange between the two people. Yeah.
Okay.
Then we go to the next one, which is the intellectual component, which has to do with care.
Uh-huh.
Now care has to do with intuning and sensing what the need and the requirement of the other person is, checking with them whether that is the case, and then proceeding to meet it to the best of your ability, or explaining that you cannot meet it also. It's
Right.
all the components.
Right.
it,
Right.
it is not about somehow burdening yourself and the caring and dying in the process. It's
Right.
about really, sensing the need and then trying to meet it as far as possible.
Right.
So if you can demonstrate care, by that
Uh-huh.
it is like if someone has asked for something, to remember, to make a note, to get back on it, to talk about it, to update them, to explain if there's a delay, to give a different timeline. These are all small care based actions that you can
Right.
demonstrate to improve your.
Right. Right.
Then we go to the emotional, which has to do with trust. Now, this is a huge deal. Trust is a
Uh-huh.
very, very big deal in relationships. Just the other
Right.
day, I saw a Facebook post which said, when there is trust, even silence is understood. When there is no trust, even words are misunderstood. So I think that's a
Absolutely.
very apt way
Powerful.
of putting it.
Very
The way
powerful.
I define trust for the purpose of relationships is the congruence between speech and behavior.
Uh-huh.
So it is no more, no less. It is not anything romantic or anything out of the way. It is
Uh-huh.
just the thing about you say what you mean what you say, and you stand by it in your actions. That
Uh-huh.
single handedly builds your credibility, and it increases your trust quotient or trust deposit in the relationship.
Right.
Now, the interesting thing is we just assume and give trust. We don't begin with mistrust. Most of us don't. Some
Right.
people are a little more, paranoid, as they say in slang. But most of us just assume that the person will uphold the openness and the trust you've given. And if you can proceed to maintain that, then the relationship just deepens a lot. So we
Mm-hmm.
have books by Bill Gates, I think, who said business at the speed of thought. And then I think it was Stephen Covey who spoke about business at the speed of trust or something
Uh-huh.
like that.
Speed of Trust is the book. Yeah.
Aha, speed of. So I think I'm sure, Vikram, you have experienced it in your own personal and professional relationships, where there's a basic regard, trust, and care.
Uh-huh.
Communication can happen like that.
Ah,
There's
right.
just no
Right.
delay. There's just no delay
Right.
because there's no doubt about the intention of the person. It's a
Right.
simple yes or a no, and there's a
Right.
lot of comfort in the relationship, right? So I can't
Right.
emphasize ever too much on trust, right? And then the
Right.
next component is the spiritual component, which is to do with commitment.
Uh-huh.
Now,
Okay.
commitment, of course, in a personal relationship has a different connotation, but even in a professional relationship, commitment is about standing by and not giving up. So
Uh-huh.
you
Okay.
may have conflict, you may have lots of misunderstanding, you may have completely different opinions, you may be fighting tooth and nail, but not giving up on the project or the person. To really stand there, that is commitment. So it's a choice. It's not just an action, but it is also demonstrated by availability, accessibility, contribution, engagement, involvement. All these things add up to commitment. And then the component that ties it all together is exclusivity. This term again has to do with intimate relationships, which is the field of my work. But how I define it even there is that in this moment of engagement with a person, can I be exclusive? Meaning, can I not be on a device? Can I not take calls? Can I not look out of the window? Can I not worry about something else that is still not done? Can I give 100% presence and attention to this moment with this person? That is exclusive.
Right.
So if you demonstrate these 5 things, respect, care, trust, commitment, and in the field of exclusivity, you will see your relationships will bloom. They will bloom no matter who it is, what it is. Yeah, by and large. However, I would like to put in a disclaimer also. There are situations, there are people, let us be accepting of it, where even the best of this may not evoke that kind of a reciprocal response. Yeah, that is there. That is always there. Now, that means, yeah, and that means you have to either take a different approach or disengage from the person. Or if that person is in your team and is reporting to you, perhaps recommend that the person, take some help. It could be different things, right? But by and large, broadly, for most human beings, this works very well. So if you can go to the next click, Vikram, I think I've said something else also here. Oh, yeah. So this axis of respect and care strengthens the relationship. It really builds a lot of tenacity and strength in the relationship. And the next axis of commitment and trust, it builds stability in the relationship. So relationships which contribute a lot in the trust and commitment department tend to be stable, because there is that basic trust and a basic commitment. So they're going to sustain and be very, very stable. And respect and care will feed them, will nourish them, and it will make them very strong. Yeah. And I think the last button has to do with the infinity loop, which shows that all of these are in an eternal infinity alignment with each other. One feeds the other, and one is nourished by the other. And therefore, you mess with one, it can also deplete the others. So it's very closely interconnected.
Very interesting.
So I hope that's a long answer to your short question, but I hope that's clear.
It's quite clear. In fact, if I or anyone who is watching it live or sees it later, if they are able to pick up just these 5 words, respect, care, trust, commitment, and exclusivity, and convert all these words into actions, I think lots of problems will get solved, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. So the next question that I have, Sujata, is kind of reverse of this, but obviously I won't expect that you straight away say that if you don't do all this, it'll happen. The question is, why do relations go bad? Some key reasons. So obviously it's quite showing up in this slide itself that when we don't work on these dimensions, the relations are likely to go bad. But I would like you to answer that differently, because that will broaden the understanding of whosoever is listening to you right now.
Right. Certainly, Vikram, certainly. So I'd like to once again bring in the concept of what we discussed before, right? Just the process of growing up can leave certain psychological complexes hidden within us in our inner space, which can keep putting out their heads here and there in every relationship. So first of all, I think that inner clearing is very, very.
Right.
Assuming you
So
have done
uh,
that.
I am slightly interjecting. Uh, can you give some examples of what is it that we might be carrying from that our growing years?
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a lot actually, but let
Yeah,
me
I
see
know.
if
I
I
know.
can quickly
I
say.
know.
So there
Right.
are there are broadly four things, okay? Broadly
Uh-huh.
four things. One is we tend to carry the what I call the parent complex, which
Uh-huh.
is a combination of different psychological patterns of both your mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
Your absorption of who they are. It is not
Uh-huh.
a intellectually consciously taken learned thing. It's just
Right.
you just grow up in the soup of your family, right? So
Right.
it is
Right. Right.
something that you absorb. So
Uh-huh.
now if you've had a very negligent kind of parenting where you were part of one big group of kids growing up, nobody really paid attention to you, negligence becomes a part of your parent complex. Or if you
Right.
had critical parenting, self criticism becomes a part of your complex, right?
Okay. Okay.
So then what happens is, in the way you relate to yourself, you tend to be both critical and negligent, meaning
Uh-huh.
you will give low priority to your own needs and
Right.
requirements, and
Right.
you will constantly do the inner critic business. You're like constantly negatively commenting upon yourself, right? This
Right.
is one complex. There's another complex which has to do with femininity. Now femininity,
Uh-huh.
it is not to do with gender. It has
Uh-huh.
to do with the archetypal energies and qualities of what it means to be masculine and what it means to be feminine. And
Right.
as men and women, we carry both these energies in us in different proportions.
Right.
So there are many men where their feminine side is also very well developed, and these people come across as well rounded, gentle but strong men. Yeah.
Right.
Similarly, there are women who have a very well developed masculine who come across as very beautiful and also very independent. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it has nothing to do with gender. Let's
Right.
understand that.
Right. Right.
But with the way our culture is, at least in the last 1,000 years or so, 500 years or so, there is so much emphasis on all the qualities that are masculine, which
Uh-huh.
has to
True.
do with achievement, accomplishment,
Right.
amassing, hoarding, collecting,
Right.
competition, winning, and
Right.
endless accomplishment. There's just no pause,
Uh-huh.
right? Now, if you
Right.
see the picture here, life actually is not a linear, endless progression. It is a
Right. Right.
cyclical spiral growth.
Right.
So, what we have done as a culture, West and East, is completely ignored cycles and we've gone after the linear growth
Right. Right.
approach, which
Right.
you can see the impact of it everywhere,
Right.
individually, family, organizations, people, nations, the globe itself, the earth,
True.
the
True.
way it is being plundered. So there's
True.
no recognition and no patience for the cyclical nature of things, right? So
Uh-huh.
what happens when we are brought up in this kind of an environment? We are um, reinforced for running around like a headless chicken, and we are
Mm-hmm.
discouraged for things like rest, rejuvenation, and recreation.
Right.
Non-work time, quiet time, unscheduled time is completely not
Right.
full day, full schedule, full busy weeks, those are encouraged and reinforced, right? So,
Uh-huh.
as a result, both men and women tend to completely ignore or sometimes even suppress and sometimes even totally look down upon these things which are supposedly feminine, which is to do with stillness, quietness, receptivity, enjoying the sunset,
Uh-huh.
really quietly cooking a meal,
Right.
sharing a talk or a drink with a friend, just the
Uh-huh.
activities which add no value, they have no utility value, but they
Right.
rejuvenate your soul.
Right.
That thing is completely gone. So now,
Right.
in fact, I always make this joke in my practice, I said nowadays the husband and wife need one wife to run the house because
Right.
fundamentally both are doing masculine things.
Right. Right.
They may
Right.
be different in gender, but both are
Right.
doing the same thing, right?
Right. Right.
So this disowned femininity is causing a lot of trouble everywhere,
True.
both at
True. True.
home
True. True.
and
True.
outside. See,
True.
at work, what happens is women are trying to be something that they are not,
Right.
and at home they are what do you say, disincentivized for being a woman.
Uh-huh.
So it's a very hard place for women to be. And similarly, men are also discovering that it's a very dry life without
Uh-huh.
integrating the feminine within themselves, the
Right. Right.
softer things, the
Right.
sensuous things, you know. So
Right.
we are, I think, as a globe, as a collective, we are in the process of recognizing and reintegrating these two things. So these are like two examples. There are plenty more, but I think this
Right.
illustrates what we are talking about. So these
Right.
things will show up. These things will show
Uh,
up as anxiety, depression, demotivation, directionlessness, sleeplessness, loss of appetite, irritability. You name it. Any psychological problem can be tracked back to one of these things
right.
inevitably. So
Right.
if you take the problem as a entry point to your inner world, then
Uh-huh.
there is this whole amazing thing to discover about yourself.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
So yeah, coming back to your original question, which is why do we have trouble? So
Uh-huh.
when these things are playing around in a relationship, they will cause complications.
Right.
So,
Right.
for example, if I have not received nurturing in my upbringing,
Right.
and I have a boss who is gentle and nurturing for me, I may
Uh-huh.
develop a more than professional interest and affiliation with the person. And
Right.
that may lead to some other kinds of issues at the workplace. So that's
Right.
one
Right.
example.
Right. Right.
I have a lot of people dealing with that
Yes.
thing.
Right.
Or if a man has grown up watching his mother being beaten up by the
Uh-huh.
husband, by the father,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and it is kind of normalized in his head, although he's
Uh-huh.
educated, he's exposed to the world, he's traveled everything, he may believe that it is not okay consciously, but
Uh-huh.
unconsciously that is the way he has learned how to relate to a woman.
Right.
So this man may not physically do any violent behavior at work, but the way he will speak to his female colleagues will be
Uh-huh.
not that great. So
Right.
that will cause trouble. So there
Right.
you have issues. So like this,
Right.
there are so many reasons why things can go wrong. But this model, this 5 pillar model,
Right.
actually helps you restore the balance every time you're falling off the rails.
Right.
But deeper work is mandatory. Deeper work
Right.
is
Of course.
in
Of
essence.
course. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So coming, this is again means what has been going on in my head all this while is that I don't know how many times will I have to listen to this recording so that I start absorbing the learnings that it is offering into my behavior and help in my relations, all kinds of relations that I am experiencing. Thank you. The next
Thank
question
you,
that is,
Vikram.
it was amazing, amazing. So it is said that people don't leave organizations, they leave their bosses. How far is it true? And by the way, can
Oh,
I stop sharing this now?
yes, please. Yes. Yes. So yes, I would say 100%. 100%.
Uh-huh.
See, people, when they are giving an interview and trying to join a company, they are looking at the net worth and this, that, and the other, the stocks and all those kinds of things are always there. But I think finally, when I say that I'm working for X company, the only relationship in my head is my boss.
Uh-huh. Right.
My immediate boss,
Right.
not the other thing. So yes, absolutely, people may join excellent companies and leave really bad bosses. That is true,
Uh-huh.
because that is the one relationship that maximally impacts your self-esteem, your
Uh-huh.
productivity, and your sense of who you are, what you contribute to the world, and what is your worth.
Uh-huh.
All of that is determined by the subtle and not so subtle messaging that the boss is giving to you. So it
Uh-huh.
is not only about meeting deadlines and delivering what the project is asking for. It is a whole lot of other things. It's about eye contact, it's about recognition, it's about respect, it's about value, it's about acknowledgement. These are all the softer requirements that we all have, which is not compensated by the salary. So
True,
there are
true.
so many instances where people have left fat salaries and bad bosses and gone for very thin salaries and great bosses. That's because we all, at the end of the day, we want to feel valued and worthy. And the boss, unfortunately, has the power to deflate both of those things.
True, true,
Any
true.
boss, any boss.
True, true.
So if it's a
True.
conscious boss, they can actually work better with their employees.
Uplift
So
them
yeah.
and right. So there is a term that I use in when it comes to emotions, dealing with emotions or emotions at workplace. There is a term that I use which is emotional salary. So this is what you have said just now. I think all that contributes to the emotional salary. We are not looking at those bucks, fat salary and thin salary, but something that touches me here, which makes me stay there and contribute more. It actually helps me to stretch myself in those situations.
Absolutely. I think you've put it very well. That's such a good phrase, emotional salary, which is not negotiated with the HR when you join.
Not at all, not at all. And no one can understand it.
No one understands
it. Yeah.
And I think we tend to underemphasize it. See, this is again one of the unfortunate impacts of the hyper masculine culture that we are living in.
Right.
Where soft skills are always dispensable. They are never given the importance that they actually have. So that's part of the hyper masculine culture we are living in.
True. Okay, coming to the next question that I have in my reserve is, what do you suggest to improve relations with bosses? We just talked about bosses, and now specifically, what is it that I can do on my part? Let's say you are my boss. So what shall I do on my part? I can't do anything about you and your behavior. But what do I demonstrate in my behavior so that my relation with you as my boss improves?
Okay. So there are two parts to this question, Vikram. I'd like to put the foundation with the other slide that I have. And then I'll come to your question. What to do with the boss. Yes. So, because I think once you understand that basic foundation, it's easier to then proceed from there.
Is this the one?
Yes, correct. So this one, right? So maybe we can go one by one. If you can maybe back up. Yeah. So again, it's placed in the 5 elements model only. So let's start with the thing of connection, which has to do with the water element.
Right.
So what I want to basically communicate, the main message in this slide is, we have not, of course, because we have no course, no study, no program, no training, nothing at all that teaches you what is relationship and how does it work. So we all tumble and bumble along and learn something and mislearn something with trial and error, right? So if we can understand the cyclical nature of any relationship, that itself will give us a lot of comfort and consolation when things are not going well. All right. So what happens in a relationship, whether it is intimate or not, we begin with a sense of connection, right? So at the workplace, now that you've joined, and now that you've gone through the orientation and you know your boss and you know this is what is to be done, there is a certain definition of the connection between you and this person. That is stage 1 of the relationship. Then comes the next one. Vikram, you can click on that. That has to do with conflict. There is no way we can avoid this as long as we are alive. No matter which relationship it is, even parent, child, whatever it is, conflict is a necessary, inbuilt, inherent component. However, the good news is it is just the second stage of a relationship. There is more after that. But
Right.
since we don't know that, we tend to get very frightened and we do all kinds of gymnastics to avoid conflict.
Right, right, right. We get
And
stuck there.
that actually ruins relationships. So
Ah,
in fact, I have a toothbrush inside which says the I think it says the blinkered pursuit of peace is the main contributor to conflict.
blinkered. Say
What
that
that
again.
means is
Blinkered.
the blinkered मतलब वो घोड़े को जो
Right,
लगाते हैं
right,
ना,
right, right, right,
हाँ,
right.
the blinkered pursuit of peace
Uh-huh.
is the main contributor to conflict.
Right.
What that means is you want peace at all cost. All you're doing is subduing the conflict, putting it under the carpet, shoving it under the table. वो
Uh-huh.
आज ना कल it will come out,
Right.
and actually it will come out in a very distorted form. It won't
Right.
come out in the
Right.
form that it went under. It will come in a very different way. So I
Yeah.
think this thing need to avoid conflict is very strange.
Uh-huh.
It is strange again from the perspective of the hypermasculinity, where the masculine approach is about clean it up, move on. Let's not,
Uh-huh.
waste time on all these irrational emotions. But
Uh-huh.
emotions, even though they are messy, they actually can add tremendous depth and value to the relationship.
Exactly.
So, as long as we accept conflict as part of any relationship, our relationship to conflict will be much more smoother, and then
Mm.
things can change. Now,
True.
as I said right at the beginning, conflict actually is a pathway to your inner world, which is a third
Right.
stage of a relationship, which is chrysalis.
Uh-huh.
Chrysalis is the cocoon stage of the butterfly,
Okay.
where it
Okay.
is inside, it is deep inside a dark, moist place,
Uh-huh.
building its own strength of its own wings and
Uh-huh.
working very hard to come out of that in a new shape, in a new form.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So when I face conflict outside, when I go inside to see what is it showing about me, what am I
Uh-huh.
doing, what am I not doing, how am I showing up in the relationship, what is going on. If I do that deep inner study, when I go into my chrysalis, when I re-emerge out of it with new insight,
Uh-huh.
then deeper relationship is possible, which is the fourth stage, which is communion.
Right.
Now, these words are more relevant perhaps to an intimate relationship,
Uh-huh.
but if you graph this on a corporate space, communion is basically a space of great trust and no competition.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah.
Collaboration.
So it applies. Yeah, collaboration, absolutely.
Right,
Right.
right.
So if we can understand that we begin with a good connection, which is usually the honeymoon phase, then we get
Uh-huh.
into conflict, which is a necessary phase, then that
Right,
takes us to chrysalis if you make the choice, and then
right.
it emerges you into a deeper relationship.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I think it ends with, yeah, deep
Right,
relation.
right,
Yeah. And of
right.
course, this
Very,
also has a cyclical
yeah,
thing to it.
obviously.
The
Obviously.
more comfortable you are with conflict, the more you will be happy in chrysalis, etc. So
Uh-huh.
that axis has to do with the rest stage of the relationship, and this one has to do with the growth stage.
Uh-huh.
So when you are in connection and collaboration, you are restoring the relationship is at rest. It
Uh-huh.
is working well,
Uh-huh.
fine. But when there's conflict and chrysalis, you're in the
Uh,
growth stage, because that is
right,
what will actually help you grow the relationship.
right.
Yeah. So now, this being the case, if you can accept this, then what do we do with the boss, or what do I do with such a boss, is
Uh-huh.
simpler to answer. So
Right, right.
now we understand this, we do our bit, we go into our own self mirroring, we go into our own insights, and come
Right.
back and re engage in a more empowered and more authentic way. That
Uh-huh.
is one possibility.
Right.
However, it's also important to understand that sometimes you may have an insight, you may be true, you may be authentic, you may be willing to be vulnerable, you may be willing to do all of that, but the person opposite you is just unable to receive that, unable to engage in that way.
Uh-huh.
Then you know you have to bring in discernment to
Uh-huh.
see whether you still want to continue to try
Right,
that
right.
thing, or
Right.
you want to work in a different way, or you want to find a different boss, then something else needs to be done, isn't it?
Right.
So
Right.
I always put this little caveat when I teach these workshops that, there is a mandate that we all work on ourselves, but there's also an equal obligation that you don't do that endlessly with no regard to the outcomes
Uh-huh. Right.
outcomes and the other person, because see, it
Right.
takes two to tango. You
Right.
can't
Right.
single-handedly keep improving yourself. It doesn't it doesn't make sense
Right.
like that, right?
Right.
You do your work, you do your 100%, but then
Right.
also be aware of where is the other person, how responsive are they, how reciprocal is the relationship, are they really valuing and reflecting and mirroring back to you, is it worth investing that much effort? All
Right.
that has to be done. And those principles are the same, whether you're in an
Right.
intimate relationship or at the job, it's the same thing.
Right. Right. Right.
So I
Right.
hope that that answers your
Absolutely.
question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now the last question from my side is it is how does relation with self impact the relation with others?
Ha. Okay. So I think it's a lovely question, Vikram, coming at the end of the hour, because it kind of summarizes everything that we've been
Right.
discussing, right?
Right.
So needless to say, I think we all understand that the way we relate to another person is
Uh-huh.
identical to the way we relate to ourselves,
Uh-huh.
actually.
Uh-huh.
However, there are certain veils or certain curtains that we need to open up, right? So each of us, in trying to navigate and adapt to the upbringing experiences, to the growing up experiences, we develop two personas at the
Uh-huh.
minimum. So
Uh-huh.
one persona is the one who has experienced all that, whether it's abandonment or trauma or negligence or criticism, whatever it is. There is that wounded part of us.
Right.
Then there is
Right.
the other persona, which is the strong coat, which we wear to the world
Uh-huh.
when we engage with others. So
Uh-huh.
let's say I'm deep internally, I'm very snappy, I'm very short on temper, I'm easy to criticize. That's my unfinished or unaddressed aspect that is with me. But when I come to work, I wear this other persona of being very patient, very kind. All of that I can
Uh-huh.
do,
Uh-huh.
right? So workplaces offer some amount of possibility for me to understand how I'm relating to myself.
Uh-huh.
But it is only in the intimate space, in the family, and in very, very close relationships that I get the full view of what exactly I'm doing with myself. Because the way I respect myself, I will respect you. If I
Uh-huh.
disrespect myself, I disrespect you. If
Right.
I take myself for granted, I will take you for granted. If I don't keep my words to myself, I will break promises to you. So, what we do in close relationships is actually who we
Right.
are. So that
Uh-huh.
becomes a opening. That becomes the possibility of so this is what has to be healed. This is what has to be worked on, and then we go
Right.
in again and work on that. Yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah.
Right. So ultimately, it boils down to how you heal yourself. How do you uh, resolve the past baggage that you're carrying, get rid of some of that baggage, whatever way it works. And
Yes.
as you keep on doing that, it will start showing up in your external world, also in your relationship with the world around you. Right. So it requires a continuous work on yourself on an ongoing basis. That's what my understanding comes to.
Absolutely. I want to add one more thing to what you said. I'm so glad in the way you have put it just now, right?
Uh-huh.
So it is not that, we can take a 1 month break, go on a retreat, clean up our baggage, come back enlightened.
Can't happen. Yeah. Can't
It
happen.
doesn't
Yeah.
it
No, it
doesn't
doesn't work
work
that.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What you said is so true. It is a spiral.
Uh-huh.
So you start here, something
Uh-huh.
is going on, you go do some inner work, throw off some baggage, come back
Uh-huh.
feeling better. Then, as you grow, you come to the next level of the spiral, something else comes up.
Uh-huh.
So it's
True.
a lifelong process. It's a
Yeah,
continuous and lifelong process.
absolutely,
And it's
absolutely.
actually very interesting and exciting also, because every time you will discover something more of who you are and what your potential is, what your capabilities are, what all is possible for you.
True,
I
true,
think
true,
it's a continuous discovery process. So
true,
yes.
true, 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 true. What I came across in one of the training programs I was attending, and that was means that continues to be a game changer for me. And
Mhm.
the phrase that was used by that facilitator was, "You can either have stories or you can have results." I'm
Ah,
repeating, you can either have stories or you can have
yes.
results. And that suddenly kind of collapsed many things inside me. So all those stories,
Yes.
they start reflecting in your relationships also, as I understand from you. Great. So now we'll open up for questions. Let's see. So audience, if you're watching us, obviously you're watching us. I'll be happy to have your questions in the comments box. As you ask questions, we'll request Sujata to share her perspective on your questions. So we'll just wait. Otherwise, we'll continue the conversation for a little while and maybe then bring it to the closure.
Sure, we can do that. Actually, Vikram, I want to comment on what you just closed with.
Uh-huh.
The thing about you can either have stories or results. Okay,
Yeah.
that is I think one of the most powerful truths. It's a
Uh-huh.
universal truth.
Right.
Okay, and you're right, it applies just as well to the relationship and personal baggage space also, right?
True. True.
So
True.
it is like, if you've had a certain kind of patterning in your close relationships,
Uh-huh.
as long as you keep revisiting and building those stories and explaining the same thing and justifying the same thing, you keep recreating the same thing going
Right. Right.
forward,
Right.
right? But if you're willing to say, I want to die to who I was, I
Uh-huh.
want to be born fresh, new, without
Uh-huh.
all that story, but with all the learnings from those
Right.
stories,
Right. Right. Right.
then I create a whole other new possibility,
True. True.
including, satisfying deep and intimate relationships.
Right.
So this dropping of the old identity is an
Uh-huh.
extremely important concept. So I
Right.
want to really emphasize that all the inner work is not in order to continue to strengthen the old idea of who you are. It
Right.
is
Right.
to throw it away, to pull out the layers, to peel away all the layers that are there, so that a more free and more expanded version of you becomes available on a regular basis.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
so glad you said that.
So the word that comes to my mind is, it's all about evolution. It's all about means. Okay, let me say this. It has just occurred to me. At any given moment, you are still a caterpillar, and you can become another butterfly. You can become another butterfly. So caterpillar and butterfly is a continuous process, and you keep on adding to your own beauty as you keep on doing this work.
Oh, you said it so beautifully. You said
Right.
it
Right.
so well. Yes. So
Right.
it's a constant cycling between caterpillar and butterfly, and
Right.
each time it's a new kind of a butterfly. So
Right.
that's what makes it exciting. Yes.
Right. 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 Awesome. Awesome. So we don't have any questions from the audience.
All
So
right.
perhaps any last closing comments from you? And there's one question that I always ask in the end. I'm asking, and you can answer that towards the end, and then we'll bring it to a logical close, so to say. And the question is, what inspires you? So you can answer
Huh.
that towards the end, and closing remarks from you, closing comments.
Okay, all right. So, closing remark, I think, first of all, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for having me on the talk. I have great regard for you, for the work you do. And it's wonderful to have these kinds of conversations with people on a similar journey.
True, true, true.
It's very enriching. It gives me an opportunity to share whatever I have learned as well, and learn even in
Uh-huh.
the kind of conversations that we have. So thank
True,
you
true.
so much. I think we've covered pretty much everything, so I don't really have any closing remarks. All I will repeatedly say is do not give up on yourself. Stay
Right, right,
committed to yourself. Stay committed
right,
to yourself. No matter how terrible and how painful it looks, if you can stand by yourself, you will emerge. You will emerge
right.
somewhere else. The butterfly will come out. Something new
True.
will happen. So that's all I would say. And what inspires me, it has changed over the years, you know.
That's okay.
So
Yeah.
psychology used to inspire me a lot. Then spirituality used to inspire me a lot. Uh, uh, People who come through extraordinary trauma
Uh-huh.
and just
Oh,
turn that thing around to into something extraordinary. I think that really inspires me. Currently, there are two things that are really inspiring me. One is this whole, and this is how this is from the time the book and the poems were happening.
yes,
This,
I
this,
forgot to ask
this
about that.
that's okay. It's not
Uh-huh.
maybe so relevant to our topic today, but I just wanted to say that the whole idea of devotion, of
Uh-huh.
bhakti,
Uh-huh.
and the texture of love that is imbued in that idea of devotion and bhakti. What is that? How does it work? The Sufi movement, our own bhakti movement from India across the country, every single
Uh-huh.
region has had
Yes.
that bhakti aspect. All the chants, all the songs, what is all that? That really inspires me these days. So I'm listening to a lot of that music. Then also what's inspiring me right now is, and in fact, I just wrote this down 2 days ago as my LinkedIn statement, the bio,
Uh-huh.
because it seems like very painful drudgery psychotherapy.
Uh-huh.
For people who come and people who talk to me, they say it must be very hard for you. You must be very depressed. No, I'm not. It is a very, very inspiring thing to do. So what is inspiring me right now is I've made it kind of a mission statement that I hold a mirror to you to help you discover your own truth, goodness, and beauty in painful or desolate relationships.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
how do
Very
you very crisply and comfortably guide someone through that to
uh-huh.
find their own truth, their own goodness, their own beauty? Then what
Right.
they do with the relationship is their choice, right?
Right, right, right,
So,
right,
so, so that is inspiring me because this one-on-one work has a certain impact. But if
right,
this can reach more people, I think it's the need of the hour. There's just a
right.
lot of struggle in that area. So that's what
Okay.
I'm working on right now.
So now what I'll just because you have said this, I am straight away giving you another invitation.
Yeah.
We can let it take it to maturity at a mutually convenient date. I do a mastermind sessions for the people who join my program,
Okay.
and it's going to be after this conversation gets over with you at 7. I have to start that. So I generally do it on Saturdays. So in one of those sessions, I'll invite you. I'll first build a context with all those people, and then one of those days I'll invite you and have conversation on relationships with the people, because you are saying that you want to expand the reach of this work.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little contribution that I can make to reach it to a little more number of people with whom I am connected.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah, yeah,
Vikram. That
yeah,
is very kind of you. Thank you
yeah.
very much.
Bye bye.
And thank you so much. I really
Yes.
enjoyed it. Yeah. We'll keep
Thank
in touch.
you.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.